Chapter 4 looks at the digestive system. We're going to look at a little bit at absorption as well, and a little bit of transportation as well. So there's a couple others, there's the circulatory system, there's the lymphatic system as well, but primarily we are looking at the digestive system here. We won't do a deep dive, into it. If you've taken, 109 or 110 or 210 at all, and you're answering some of the questions on the exam, and you know a little bit more in-depth information and you answer it in that regard, I will accept it. Because we are just looking at some of the basic information here when it comes to the digestive system. We're not, going deep and hard into it all. Just looking at some of the major components, major functions, some distinct nuances of the various different structures associated with the digestive system is what we're looking at here. So it's just kind of like an overview. So if anatomy is not your thing, don't worry. It will be, at least for this class. When we look at the digestive system, it has three major functions. It breaks down the food into smaller bits. This allows us to get at the nutrients that are going to be in all of the food products that we are consuming. This allows us to absorb those nutrients, allow our body to utilize it. And then whatever we don't use, get rid of it. Get rid of it through the bowels. So there are two major things that are going on here. One is digestion, and two is absorption. And digestion is that breaking something large into smaller pieces. Process starts in the mouth, continues in the stomach, and into the small intestine, where we absorb stuff. That's where we primarily absorb stuff. We can absorb a few things within the stomach, and we can absorb a few things within the large intestine. But for all intents and purposes, absorption is really occurring within the small intestine. And absorption is just the uptake of nutrients. We take them from the digestive tract, absorb them in, and then we can distribute them around the body. And that's going to be the transportation part of it that we'll talk about at the end of this lecture. And that requires the blood, the circulatory system. All right. So you have digestion, the process of breaking something large down into smaller parts. When you take that piece of chicken and you chomp on it and chew it, you're mashing it up mechanically, right, with your teeth. You're breaking it down into smaller component parts, from a big chicken looking thing to now just mush, breaking it down. It's going to allow absorption to occur and continued breakdown within the stomach and the small intestine. Absorption, again, the uptake of nutrients from the digestive tract. It also has other names: the GI tract, the alimentary canal, the gut. There are a lot of names. I usually just call it the GI tract or the digestive tract, right? But there are other names for it. But just be comfortable with using all of them interchangeably, because I do most times as well. So here's your digestive system in all its glory. You are just one big tube from mouth to anus. All right. So when we look at the digestive system, we're going to start here in the mouth. This is where the tube begins. And then here is the esophagus. Here is the stomach. Again, this is one long tube. Continues here into the small intestine, and all this junk right here, all that's the small intestine. Then we turn and we go through the large intestine. Again, one long tube from mouth into the rectum and out the anus, and now we are done through the tract. So this is your GI tract. It is all this: mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. There are things that assist the digestive tract. Okay, these are your accessory organs. Liver, gallbladder, a little bit of it right there. Pancreas, you can see a little bit of it right there, kind of sits right behind the stomach here. These are accessory structures, okay? Accessory means they assist, they help, right? Food does not go through here. Food goes through the tube, mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. The accessory structures just secrete things into the tube to assist in breaking things down. Okay. When we look at the digestive tract, when we look at that tube, it has some very distinct layers. It has a mucosa and it has a muscular layer. And there are a couple other layers as well. Okay. There's a thicker, just connective tissue piece on the outside that maintains its shape, keeps it anchored into the, along with some of the surrounding structures. So there's some other ones, but the two major layers that I would like you to know for this class are the mucosa and the muscular layer. Right? These are the two most important layers because these are going to be doing things that we're going to be discussing about. I imagine you can figure out what the muscular layer does. Okay, muscles are involved with movement, so they're going to be involved with some moving. Okay. There are a couple different types, or a couple different layers of muscle within the digestive tract. One is orientated circularly. Okay, so the muscles are arranged in a circular pattern. Pretty easy. Okay, they're going to do this. They form sphincters. Who doesn't love saying that? Okay, sphincters. The other one is longitudinal. I have this little gnat that's in here. It's bugging the hell out of me. Okay, and then you have other muscles. If I just draw the tube this way, okay, that are orientated in this direction. These are longitudinal. Pretty easy. Okay. They're going to contract and cause some shimmying. Okay. Just goes back and forth, just like that. Okay. Both of these types of muscles have an important goal, have an important function to do with this digestive tract. Okay. One is going to be helpful in helping to make the food smaller, increases the surface area. Okay. And I think I have a picture here in a little bit. Ooh, here's a better picture. See, there you go. There's longitudinal. Okay. And then there's a circular. Okay. So there you can kind of see the two orientations. Okay. And another function of this not only is just a shimmying, but it's also going to close up and push stuff forward through the tube. Okay. It ensures stuff goes forward through the tube. Important. I don't want food going backwards. Not intuitive for digestion. So that's the muscular layer. If I go back up, the mucosa is the innermost layer of this digestive system. Okay. And that is what you see right here on this little picture. Okay. There's your mucosal layer right here. I'm just going to put an M. Okay. There's the mucosal layer right there. By the name, you can see mucus is part of it. And there will be some mucus that gets secreted through some of the digestive tract. Not through all of it, but there is some mucus that gets squirted out, as we'll kind of look at in a couple different regions here. But it surrounds this mucosa surrounds the inner part of the tube, okay? And I'm just going to put an L here for lumen, okay? The lumen is just the center of the tube, and that's what they're trying to show you right here, all right? This is the lumen, okay? This is the lumen, L-U-M-E-N, lumen, okay? And it is what food, water, everything that you swallow goes through this tube. And we refer to this center hollow space as the lumen. And you can kind of see here, we've broken some food stuff down into smaller bits. All that is happening within the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract. And you can see it has some special lining here. It's called epithelium, all right? Epithelium is what specifically lines this. Here you can kind of see this is simple columnar epithelium for those that know. Provides some protection because it's really tall. You can see it has some wonderful little fingers on it. Those are called microvilli. And we'll kind of look at some of the adaptations here when we get down into that region, small intestine, that is. But here you can kind of see when we got some absorption occurring right here as we bring it across from the lumen into the cell and then ultimately into the circulatory system. Again, pictures of the muscle there, longitudinal and muscular, or longitudinal and circular, sorry. We have two types of muscular movements associated with the muscular layer. One is called segmentation, and the other is called peristalsis. Okay. Segmentation is no net movement. Okay. Segmentation is no net movement. When I say that, I mean that food or food stuff is not being propelled forward through the system. It's being shimmied back and forth, okay? This is what segmentation does. This does a couple different things. One, it mixes. What's it mixing? Enzymes. Okay? It's mixing the enzymes that get secreted in the mouth, okay? And in the various other regions that we'll talk about here. It allows those enzymes to be mixed with the food that you just swallowed. You also, as you kind of shimmy it back and forth, you are breaking it up. If I draw a picture here, draw a big old picture. Okay. Here is your chunk of food that you swallowed. Okay, it's called a bolus for those that want to know. BOLUS. This is a bolus of food. This is just what you've chewed up. This is your chicken sandwich that you just ate. Okay, congeal it into this blob. Okay. Well, enzymes are going to act along the surface. And they get secreted by the glands in your mouth, right? Other glandular structures throughout the digestive tract. And these enzymes are going to help to break down the larger macronutrients inside here, into smaller bits, into their component parts, so we can absorb them. If this would just go forward through the tube, enzymes would only be acting on the surface. But if I can shimmy this thing back and forth a little bit, okay, okay, I can do this. But as I shimmy it back and forth, I can kind of break it up a little bit. And what am I doing here? What am I doing? Does anybody know? I'm breaking this thing up. I'm breaking it up and I'm increasing the surface area. So here's my surface here. Now here's my surface. And if I shimmy this thing enough, I can increase the surface area a ton. And I'm just going to put SA for surface area. So what has segmentation done? It has mixed stuff. It has mixed this chunk of food that I've swallowed with enzymes. What else has it done? It's increased my surface area to allow enzymes to do more work. This makes absorption a heck of a lot easier down within the small intestine. So segmentation is mixing, and this will just shimmy it back and forth as it goes forward through the tube. The contraction is, of this muscle here within the digestive tract, this is smooth muscle for those that don't know, okay? Smooth muscle is very slow to contract, and it holds it for a much longer period of time compared to, muscle, skeletal muscle. You contract it, I'm holding, and then eventually you just get too tired. You can't maintain that, and you just peter out. All right. But with smooth muscle here, it can contract slowly, really hard for an extended period of time as this stuff gets squirted forward through the system ultimately. Okay. So this type of segmentation can happen pretty easily here within this tubular structure. Here is peristalsis. It is net movement. Okay. It is net movement. Here you can kind of see the contraction on the backside of that circular muscle, the relaxation on the front side, and then this segment will contract, and then it'll go forward, and then another segment behind it will contract, and it'll keep pushing the bolus, the food mass, forward through the tube. It's involuntary. That just means it just happens. You don't go, okay, contract esophagus, contract, contract, contract. I'm not in the stomach yet, and plop. Okay, you don't think about it. It just happens. Okay, smooth muscle is involuntary. All right, you don't have to think it to happen. It automatically does. By some specialized cells called the interstitial cells of Cajal. And I just love saying the name. You don't need to know it. So here's that kind of segmentation right here, the peristalsis over here on this side. So here's segmentation, and you can see I've taken this chunk of food and I've increased the surface area. More surface area for enzymes to do their action. Propulsion, peristalsis, contract, relax, goes forward and then contracts, and just this wave of contraction just continues until it's through the tube. Can peristalsis be sped up? Yeah. Bacteria can speed it up. The content of the food can increase the rate at which propulsion occurs. So, and we'll look at that as we start getting into some of the macros in the next unit. We do have an area within the, throughout the digestive tract, I guess I should say, where we need to govern the entrance and exit to various different structures. These areas where I have a thickened up region of muscle are called sphincters. Sphincters govern the entrance. Here is your lower esophageal sphincter, your cardiac sphincter. Okay. This is what happens as that bolus, as that food mass or bolus of food is traveling down the esophagus here. As it hits certain spots here, it's going to cause this sphincter, this thickened region of circular muscle, to relax and open up. And that food mass plops itself into the stomach. As it does its thing here, when it's ready to leave, we have another sphincter. Okay, it's the pyloric sphincter, and we'll talk about these sphincters when we get to the organs. This sphincter here governs the exit. Okay. As you break this food down, as you mash it up here in this stomach, it'll come up here and it'll start exerting pressure against this little sphincter. And that's going to make this sphincter relax and open up. And it oozes out. It's like, think of the pyloric sphincter like a toothpaste tube. And you only ooze out a little bit at a time. Okay, that's kind of how it works. So, which allows digestion and absorption to occur properly within the small intestine here. Duodenum is just the first part of it, small intestine. But we'll have, those are two sphincters. There's an upper esophageal sphincter up higher in the esophagus. You have the pyloric valve. It's a sphincter as well. Okay. You have the external anal sphincter. You have an internal anal sphincter. You don't control the internal one. You control the external one. That's what you learn how to control when you learn to go poo-poo. The last thing we'll mention here is the digestion process. Okay, there are two types of digestion, and we're introducing them now. We'll talk about them sporadically over the rest of the remainder chapter today, and then we'll talk about these again when we look at carbohydrates, when we look at fats, when we look at protein, okay, in the next unit. This chapter right here, we will be talking about within the next unit in those three chapters. We'll also be talking about it when we start looking at the micronutrients and how their digestive process occurs. So we're going to be talking about the mouth, the stomach, the small and large intestine here. We'll be talking about it in unit 2. We'll be talking about it in unit 3. Why do I say this? I say this, learn it now. It makes things a hell of a lot easier later on. So just put the effort in now, get it understood, have it somewhat memorized. So when we discuss these things in the next 2 units, you won't have to go back and review anything because you'll already know it. Mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. These are 2 different types. Mechanical is a physical treatment. You chewing the food, teeth, mashing the food. Okay. In the stomach, there is some mechanical digestion there. We have muscular layers that allow us to work over that food. So there is some mechanical digestion that occurs. Okay. Chemical digestion is what we're going to be talking a lot more about. Okay. Chemical digestion is the use of enzymes to help break down food molecules into smaller components. Okay. The classic example, proteins. Proteins are nothing but a long chain of amino acids strung together. We have enzymes that breaks these things down into, instead of a chain of 1,000, into a chain of maybe a couple hundred. I have other enzymes that will then break down that into smaller bits. There may be 10 amino acids in length. And then I have other amino acids that cleave off 1 or 2 of those dudes. So there are a number of enzymes that are going to be involved in this process, getting these big, massive structures, these big things, into much, much, much smaller components, 1 or 2 at a time. That makes it a heck of a lot easier for the body to then absorb them. The body can absorb big things because it's got to get across that cell, that cellular surface. It's got to get through that mucosal layer. It's got to get in through that simple columnar epithelial cell. And if it's really big, it won't come across because you'll destroy the cell. You would destroy the functionality of that organ. Okay. So we got to break these things down into smaller and smaller bits. And that's what chemical digestion is via enzymes.